The only thing better than flopping quads is getting paid off when you flop quads. Stick around. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Exceptional Poker Video. In today's session, I'm going to play some more $5 zone. In this case, I'm two-tabling. Did about a 20-minute session. You guys had sent me some email, a couple of you had, saying that you really like the micro-stakes games, the $5 and $10 games. And so I'm going to be playing more of these. Just show you how you can build a bankroll at the micro stakes, at the $5 and $10 tables. It's not my normal stakes. I typically play higher than this, but this is what you guys like. And so I'd love to hear more. If you've got any more requests or other things you'd like to see, let me know. Leave me a comment in YouTube in one of the boxes below. If you're watching this on my website, there's I think it's on this side over here. There's a comment button that you can click on and leave me a comment. So without further ado, why don't we get into the session, and got a couple of interesting spots, including, as I said, the quads on the end there, which are kind of fun. So let's get going. Okay, so here we go. As you can see, I'm two-tabling zone, $5 zone tables here. And there's a whole bunch of folding going on in this session, as usual. A couple of spots I felt I might have been a little bit too tight. I recorded the screencast earlier today. I recorded the video, got up early and played. So this session was played around 6:30 a.m., something like that, Arizona time, on a Saturday morning, and there weren't a lot of tables. Here on the left, I've got a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw and stuff like that, so it's an easy C bet, continuation bet. Just went ahead and took it down. So I got up early and played. This is New Year's Eve day. We got a limper here on the right. I'm going to punish him with the king jack off, kind of a standard re-raise for me. We did get cold called by the small blind and the original limper. My raise there looks pretty strong to somebody who isn't really at these tables. It looks strong to these players. So I'm repping the ace here. The only way either of these players are going to continue is if they have an ace in their hand or something like, two pair, which they probably wouldn't have. Think about the preflop ranges where they're both cold calling raises. What kind of aces are they just cold calling with? Maybe suited aces, but there's a whole bunch of pairs, whole bunch of weak broadways, whole bunch of suited connectors in their hand ranges there. So firing into them, multi-way there into both of them makes a lot of sense on that ace high board. I've represented strength preflop, and I'm going to continue that representation. I'm not going to continue more than one bullet, though. Probably I'll give up on the turn if one of these guys comes along, but that's a pretty profitable C-bet to make there in that situation. Ace-9 suited, we're folding to a early position raise. The Queen-5 is an easy fold. The Queen-3 should be an easy fold. And there's an open raiser in the cutoff, so we're going to go ahead and fold it. The ace-3, we're going to fold king deuce, and so on. So it's New Year's Eve day. Going to go over to some relatives' house later today and just have a very early celebration, then come home and probably be in bed by 10 o'clock, which is our norm. It's been probably 20 years since I stayed up and saw New Year's in, which is fine. I was up early, got some work done, played this session, which turned out to be a nice, profitable little session. Just kind of a typical day here. It's a little bit rainy and gloomy outside. Okay, here on the left, we got to see a free flop with 6-4 off, and we flopped top two. So we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of money in here and see what happens. Okay, so we get a min raise from the cutoff. It generally means strength. So don't really want to chase this guy off, so we're just going to check. I checked the turn here because he raised on the flop, and I was expecting him to flop, to bet again on the turn, and I thought I could check raise. He didn't. He actually checked behind, unfortunately. So maybe I got a little bit too fancy there, a little too tricky. He turns over aces, which is, as I said, his little min raise there on the flop said strength, but he actually had strength pre-flop and got fancy, did his own fancy play syndrome there, which is horrible play. If you've got aces, you've got to raise them pre-flop. People who limp in with aces are just giving up so much money to begin with. They're not building value when they're ahead. And when you have aces, you're guaranteed to be the strongest hand pre-flop. And then the other, it's a huge sin, as they say in poker, to let your opponent see free cards. And there he let me see a free flop, and I flopped top two and had him crushed. If he had raised pre-flop with those aces and I had 6-4 off in the big blind, I'm folding it. He's not letting me see a flop. Yeah, he's not getting paid off, but it's also not costing him a ton of money either when I do hit. So those kind of limp opens with aces are really anything. I'm not a believer in opening a pot for a limp essentially ever. There might be one or two situations, very specialized situations, where you might consider doing that. But for the most part, vast majority of the time, if you're going to enter a pot and you're going to open it, you open for a raise. Especially with a hand like aces that is so strong, you need to build value, and they're so vulnerable post-flop. It's so easy for somebody to flop two pair like I did there. And he's lucky I didn't take all of his stacks, his entire stack. So what are you going to do? We didn't get paid off, and because we got ourselves got a little bit too tricky there, checking to him on the turn, expecting to be able to check raise. So c'est la vie. It's not a horrible check. Probably could have gotten more money, and knowing he had aces now in hindsight, we probably could have gotten more money in on the river. He's probably calling a bigger than pot size bet. We potted it there. But c'est la vie. So you'll notice sometimes the tables fill up a little bit slow here. There weren't a lot of people playing here. So I'm going to open the king queen off and the queen nine off. So I think there were only like 35 people when I joined this table, join zone to play. So the 994 is a pretty dry board. It's really hard for him to continue with it, much of anything there. So we're just c-betting with our overcards, sort of a semi-bluff kind of a hand. So anyway, the tables were a little bit slow at times to fill up because there weren't the full 50 people plus that are typically at these games. So I'm calling with the threes. I'm checking to the razor here, and unfortunately checks around. So now I've got to build some value. So I'm betting 3/4 of pot, something like that, and unfortunately they fold. Again, I was out of position. It's hard to make a lot of money there with the threes, but we made a few pennies, which is fine. 7-6 we're going to fold. Queen Jack we're going to fold to the limp there. We're in too early position. We're not going to open it. We're not going to call or raise somebody else in early position there with a hand that weak. 9-6 we're going to let go. Jack 8 we're going to open as a steal. Kind of a gray, gloomy day here. Woke up to rain, which is pretty unusual in Arizona and where I live, southern Arizona. Rain is always one of those special things. We get it so infrequently here that it's always terrific to have a rain. It just puts a really nice feel to the day, especially waking up to it. We're going to quit with the 4-3 suited there. The board is pretty scary. 9-4, we get to see a free board, and we flop middle pair. Pretty coordinated board though, and we're getting bet into, so it's really, we're multi-way here, really easy to be beaten there. It's just not worth putting any more money in. Maybe I could have called and seen one street, but that's okay. Caution is the better part of valor, or the better part of bankroll building, maybe is a better way to say it. So it's been raining off and on outside. I'm looking outside at rain on the cactus, which is kind of nice. Okay, we got queens on the button. And of course, we're going to open it for a raise. And we got cold call out of the small blind. Pretty dry board. It's almost certain we have the best hand still, so we're betting for pure value here. We don't want him to go away, so we're not over betting the pot. But we're trying to build it. The jack, he could have a king jack in his hand pretty easily here, or something like that. Jack 10. So we're going to continue the value story. And the 3 doesn't help him at all, can't help him. So we're going to continue our plan to build some value and take some money off of him. The 5-4 suited, we're punishing the limper here. Pure isolation raise. He's got a slightly deeper than 100 big blind stack, so he's not a terrible player. But unfortunately, we got re-raised out of the big blind, so we got to let it go. Big blind had folded there. We're going to play a pot in position with initiative, with position against a guy who should know better. He's limping into the pot, pretty weak hand. So that's a profitable play typically to ISO raise there. 7 deuce we're going to fold. Excuse me. We're going to open the 10-7, of course. Purely a steal. We get any kind of action, we're giving up. The king 10 here, I ended up folding it, if I remember. Yep, I did fold it. I think because the guy bet so large, he opened for 30 cents, which is a really unusual raise size. Might be a little too nitty to fold there, but you got to remember that folding is 0 EV. It doesn't cost you anything. Those blinds weren't mine. This is a really, really important lesson that a lot of beginning and intermediate and even advanced players fail to grasp. It's a sunk cost. It's like when you're in business and you've spent money on some kind of capital upgrades or something, and now you're trying to figure out what to do moving forward. That money spent on the upgrades to your equipment doesn't matter. It's called a sunk cost. It should not factor in any of your decision making moving forward directly. And it's the same thing with blinds. You've posted the blinds. Those blinds now belong to the pot. They don't belong to you. So this idea of defending your blinds is crazy. It's one of those myths in poker that even some very otherwise good players, very smart players, perpetuate. They believe it, and it's a terrible leak in a lot of players' games. In that particular case, calling probably would have been okay. So here we got a limp under the gun. We've got ace 3 in the right. Might have the best hand, so I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at it. That limp is pretty weak under the gun there from the guy in the 6th seat. On the right, I'm taking a stab as well, and then I got repopped, and the same thing on the right, I got re-raised as well. So both cases, I'm going to let it go. So getting back to that king 10, maybe calling and seeing the flop and playing a hand in position makes sense, but I just don't know what that 30-cent open raise means. Jacks, 10s, something like that. He doesn't want action. And those jacks are, at best, I'm at best a coin flip against them. Is that, I don't know. I've got to think about that one. So we're just chugging along here. This is kind of real standard play. If you're playing this way, if you're playing a very tight, very cautious style of poker, you can do pretty well at these $5 games. You should be able to build a bankroll. Okay, here we're gonna obviously raise it up with our kings. Under the gun guy opens for 15 cents, and now we're gonna 3x his bet for value, pure value. And we get cold called. Pretty wet board. 3 to a straight, 2 to a flush. That little 5-cent bet feels like a blocking bet. He doesn't, he wants to kind of find out where he is, which is also a bad play in poker. And then we raised him and he called, so he's got a piece of this, but he's nervous. We've got the king of clubs, so we've got the backdoor flush draw as well, so we're going to fire again there every time. The nines, I'm just completing multi-way here. 2 overcards or spade draws in the right table here, so we're not going to put a whole lot of money. Now the spades got there. There's straight draws, there's flush draws, overcards. This is one of those things that if I was heads up, I'm probably betting here into these guys, but multi-way, I'm just going to check it down. I ended up having the best hand if I remember here, yeah, I did. So. But I'm not putting a whole lot of money, or if any, into that pot multi-way out of position. So again, if you're playing that sort of style, really cautious, almost scaredy cat, if you will, at times, but also really aggressive when you think you have the best hand, or when you think you can get somebody with a better hand to fold. But for the most part, playing an ABC value, very cautious, tight aggressive, very positionally aware style. You should be able to make, easily a buy-in an hour easily at these tables. $5 an hour if you've got a table open. Here we've flopped top pair, horrible kicker. We've got a blocker. I'm sorry, a guy betting into us, but there's straights and there's flushes and all sorts of things. So again, I'm not putting much money. I'm checking to him on the river here, hoping he's going to bluff into me and then call him. So I was bluff catching there. It turns out he wasn't he's not bluffing. He had a very weak flush. So we got a min raise open in middle position. I ended up folding the cards there. The king queen might have been a little bit too nitty of a fold, but again, caution's the better part of valor. King 7, I am continuation betting here. A little bit of a wet board. The jack and the 9 is a little bit coordinated, but not horribly so. So that's a pretty standard C-bet. C-bet bluff. Gonna fold the 5-6 suited out of position. We got an under the gun raiser in the left table here, so we're gonna fold our 10-5. All kinds of limps going on the right table. A limp under the gun, somebody limp behind. This is one of the rare times that I'm actually going to call with a hand like ace-5 suited. This is a family pot. Unfortunately, the big blind bumped it up, and then the other guys are calling. I'm getting a pretty good price to continue. It's folding there is perfectly fine too. We flopped middle pair, and we're not putting any more money in this pot, or very little, if any. And we'll see, we're 5-way on a board that's getting coordinated, so we're just letting it go. Queen 4 suited, we're going to fold, of course. 9-8 off, we're going to open as a steal. We're going to open the 9-8 off on the left table as well as a steal, blind versus blind. That's a little loose of an open steal there. I was getting maybe a little cocky at that time. Often I'm just folding there. Suited 9-8, probably opening for a raise. Offsuit 9-8, I would probably generally advise just folding there, but worked out for us. Okay, here we've got king, queen, and this is a weird call that I made. I rarely call in this position because I've got a trap hand, but I flop top 2, and the stack to pot ratio with the guy in the 6th seat is like 2.5 to 1. We're pot committed basically against him. But then he folds, well, we got top pair boards. There's flush draws and straight draws, so we are betting for value there, with the secondary reason of some protection against that second player is stuck around. So we're just chipping up here, basically. This is how you build a bankroll at these stakes. You don't get crazy. You don't get your money in unless you know you're well ahead, or you're very likely to be ahead. You just don't do something stupid. You just play straightforward poker. Wait for good situations and bet for value. Try to steal the blinds and continuation bet on dry boards that don't hit your opponent's range. It's not really rocket science at these stakes. Okay, going to open the 10s here. Here's the quads hand. It's kind of interesting. So we open under the gun, and then the big blind 3-bets us, and this screams strength. To me, it screams jacks plus, ace king suited, ace queen suited maybe. But I'm getting enough to set mine, and we hit the mother of all sets. We hit quads. And against an aggressive player, I don't want to chase him out. So I'm just going to call here. This is one of these, I was talking about fancy play syndrome. This is not fancy play syndrome, because I'm up against an aggressive player in position, and he is showing strength. He's saying, look, I love my hand, or, he's saying, go away, and I'm not. He should have given up by now. As you'll see when he turns over, but he fires into me. I just let him take the lead and came along. That was a hopeless bluff on his part. Re-raising an under-the-gun open raiser like I was, like he did to us. I don't know what he thought we were on, or he thought we would go away, but we have a strong hand, and if we're not folding there, he should have put us on, jacks plus ourselves. Opening under the gun and then not going away on that board. And he just couldn't do it. Couldn't get away from his hand, from the bluff, basically. You got to remember, when you're bluffing, what story are you telling? And just as importantly, what is your opponent telling you back? He's not going away. We were not folding. And we had to have something there. Maybe he thought he could get us to fold a weaker pair, something like that, under pair to the board or something like that. But don't know. Regardless, we got paid off. So another fun session. I had fun making this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it. Love to hear your comments. Again, drop your comments in YouTube in the box below this video, or if you're watching this on my website, exceptionalpoker.com, leave a comment there too. I'd love to hear from you. You can also always email me. I get a lot of email, and I try to answer everything sent to me. Got a question about poker? Got a question about a hand you've played, or a theory question? Let me know. I've been playing a long time, and I just really enjoy helping others get better. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.